You just wanted a chance to use it.
I told him to. It's fun, isn't it?
I can do it again if you want.
Sure. Do it at the end. You have to wait till we get online.
All right, Mr. Chair, you can begin in 3, 2, 1.
I'll call the meeting of the Planning Advisory Committee to order. We'll begin by reading the land acknowledgement statement. On December 14th, 2023, we acknowledge that this sacred land on which Smith Falls is now located has been a site of human activity for over 10,000 years and is rich in Indigenous history. This land is the ancestral unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation. We are grateful to the Algonquin ancestors who cared for the land and water in order that we might meet here today. We are also grateful to the Algonquin people for their contribution in making of the Rideau Canal, which runs through Smith Falls. We are mindful of the broken covenants and the need to reconcile with all our relations. Together we may care for this land and each other, drawing on the strength of our mutual history of nation building through peace, friendship, being mindful of generations to come. I'm John Wanless, Chairman of the Planning Advisory Committee. I'll now introduce the committee members and staff in attendance. Please raise your hand when I state your name. Councillor Jay Brennan.
Present.
Jacqueline Grimes.
Present.
Stephen McGuire. Yvonne Robert.
Present.
Councillor Stephen Robinson.
Present.
To review, committee members are asked to raise their hand and wait until called upon by the chair if they wish to speak. Item number 2 on our agenda. Can I have a motion for the approval of the agenda? Moved by Steve, seconded by Yvonne. All in favor? Carried. Adoption of minutes. Planning Advisory Committee meeting, November 9th, 2023. Can I have a motion? Moved by Jay, seconded by Stephen. All in favor? Carried. Special Planning Advisory Committee meeting, November 23rd, 2023. Moved by Steve, seconded by Yvonne. All in favor? Carried. Disclosure of monetary interests. Public meetings, we have none. Priority issues. Report number PAC-23-17, subdivision application revisions, SD-19-01. Carl.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good afternoon, PAC. This application, this discussion this afternoon is actually a little bit different, and this is where the PAC gets to use its advisory role a little bit. Most of what we've seen beforehand are approval, hosting of statutory public meetings, looking at minor variances or consents, where the committee has the opportunity to issue a formal approval. In this case, we're looking at a subdivision, and the role for the Planning Advisory Committee here is to assess what's before you and provide comments and feedback to council, all of which will be considered by council when they ultimately make the decision on the proposal on the proposed modifications. So this, as indicated in the presentation, this evening we're looking at modifications to phase 3 of the Bellamy Farm subdivision. So this relates to the lands that are undeveloped on the west side of Staples Boulevard. So in 2021, council gave draft approval for lands on both sides of Staples Boulevard, a total of 250 residential units, and the first phase of that approval is currently under development. It's the black area here, 7.3 hectares that we're looking at. And so at this particular, back in 2021, the draft approval called for about 84 units to be developed on that part of the subdivision. There was a proposed connection to the Cataraqui Trail as well, and there was always a plan for the lands on the very west side to be used for stormwater management. So in this case, draft approval was given. Parkview, the developer, had obtained final approval for lands on the other side of Staples Boulevard. Those lands are currently being constructed right now, entirely of townhouse development. So the original draft approval called for, I think it was 84 residential units, mostly singles, some semis. I believe there are a couple of townhouses in there. At this point, Parkview Homes advises that the market for townhouses has been very robust, and they are proposing to make this entirely a townhouse phase. So they would be through these modifications, they'd be looking at increasing the overall door count to 156 dwelling units in phase 3. So that's an increase of roughly 70 over what was approved back in 2021. So council's draft approval included a variety of conditions. Some of those conditions included specific unit counts and conditions specifically related to the previous to what was originally contemplated at that point. So this would need to be changed if the modifications were to be accepted. So what's being proposed? Just a quick summary there. 156 townhouse units. Most of those are proposed to be 2-story. Some of those, the ones facing the stormwater pond, and I'll show the map on the next slide. Those are proposed to be bungalow townhouses, but a little bit raised, so there'd be walkouts to the back. There's a park, a little over half an acre in size, at a fairly central location within the subdivision, actually. So that would be conveyed to the town, and that is a change from what was previously proposed. So the slide mentions the presentation mentions a number of other easements and other blocks in there. I think what's also helpful to note too is that towards the rear, and actually I'm just going to jump right onto the map there. Towards the rear, on the left-hand side of the map, that is where there's a proposal for a dry stormwater pond. It'll be long and narrow, and on the other side of that pond is an existing pathway connection. So we're actually proposing to create a direct connection within the subdivision, 5 meter wide at the sort of the bottom corner of that, a 5 meter block to provide access to that pathway, which would then that can form part of a connection to the Cataraqui Trail. To the left hand of that pathway, it's indicated in green. There is the Swale Provincially Significant Wetland, and the blob. It's hard to see on that map, but the black blob there is a wetland compensation area that Parkview has provided as a condition of approval for the expansion of Broadview Avenue. So you'll recall that Broadview Avenue was a rural cross-section road before the subdivision was developed, and as part of that approval, they had to widen. Broadview Avenue was widened to form to collector standard. That widening was involve displacement of some of the provincially significant wetland there. So the developers worked out with the Rideau Valley Conservation Authority a wetland compensation plan where some of that scrubland on that side there is going to be dug out, fish habitat be created, a series of plantings be done, and that is completed at this stage, and that would be accessible to residents of the subdivision. So I think just to highlight there, that was the original draft approval called for 250 units in total through the subdivision approval. So we're just looking at roughly half of the geographic area that hasn't received final approval that they're looking to change. So draft approval was accompanied by 55 conditions. A lot of those conditions require engineering and final detailed design work to be completed before the conditions are satisfied and the plan can be registered. So at this point, we're just looking at those 7.3 hectares that are indicated on the previous map. So the draft approval conditions, the 55 conditions there, are presently legally binding. The developer is requesting the council amend those conditions to accommodate the new proposal. So at this point, the application and the associated technical submissions have been provided in late November. So that's been provided to staff. They've been deemed complete, so we have the information that we need. It's currently undergoing review right now. So the engineering, the stormwater management, the traffic, those technical reports are being reviewed right now through our third party review. It's important to note as well that there has been changes to legislation as well. So previously, any subdivision or major amendment to a subdivision required a statutory public meeting similar to zoning applications. So the Act no longer requires that statutory public meeting for subdivisions. It's viewed as more of a technical process similar to a site plan approval. So we still give notice of receipt of a complete application. Somebody can still provide, we can still choose to hold a statutory, or not a statutory, we can still choose to hold a formal public meeting. We still can receive written feedback, but the tone of the Planning Act changes right now with respect to subdivisions. Views the public process as more of informing the public that this is happening rather than consulting the public before it's approved, which is compared to zoning changes where there still is that requirement for a statutory public meeting. Likewise, appeal rights are limited to certain prescribed agencies identified in the Planning Act and regulations. So utility companies, conservation authorities, they can appeal decisions, but there isn't a right of public appeal anymore. So again, that is legislative change that we're simply following the legislation there. However, we did, in accordance with the Act, we did give notice of receipt of the complete application. We haven't received any public feedback. We've received a little bit of utility feedback at this point. So I think, like any Planning Act application, there's a series of criteria spelled out in our official plan that we assess before we to form the staff and planning advisory committee recommend. So that there's a number of provisions or number of sections in our official plan that would be identified for review, and the presentation outlines a number of them. Residential density, general town design, transportation networks, those are going to be considered and assessed by staff as well as our third-party engineering consultants to form a recommendation to council. So the lands are zoned for the intended purpose. Most of the Bellemeade Farm subdivision has a residential type 3 special exception zone that provides a little bit of flexibility for singles, semis, and townhouses. So that's what's in place now, and from what we've observed so far, subject to final plans being submitted, what we've observed so far is that the subdivision plan and the blocks appear to demonstrate zoning compliance with everything. Certainly that would need to be verified at the development. So I think at this point, the role of the Planning Advisory Committee, and this is where we're going to open the conversation around the table, is to provide provide advice and feedback, just not necessarily on the technical, on the engineering, all of that, but just on your thoughts on what's being proposed as a whole. And the presentation provides a few guiding questions for the committee's consideration. So does the general nature of this proposed of the revision, does that conform with the OP policies? Does it establish an appropriate development? Is it desirable and appropriate for the town of Smith Falls? Is this generally compatible? Is this a compatible form of development? So I think just to highlight for the committee's consideration, draft approval is in effect for a concept that involves mostly singles and semis. So we know that medium and low density residential development is already on the books for this area. So what the committee is being asked to consider and provide comment on is the proposed increase to accommodate an exclusively townhouse style of development, along with the parks and open space that's now proposed to be included within the within the development. So just a quick note on sort of the process and the next steps is that at this point the technical review is out with our third-party consultants, and we will be providing, from the committee's feedback, from staff and technical feedback, we'll be providing a general town response to the developer on the application. Once it is ready to go to council, then we'll be bringing forward a report to council with a recommendation, and then council will have the opportunity to consider issuing a revised notice of decision and revised conditions. So I think at this point, the committee has an important role to provide your feedback on what's before us. So I'll just jump back to the questions that Richard posed on his presentation, and I'd also like to acknowledge that Scott Mason, on behalf of Parkview Homes, is present here as well. So if there are any technical questions about the proposal, then we'll welcome, or the chair can recognize Scott to provide feedback. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thanks. Jay.
Thank you, Carl. And so just to be clear, this has already been approved. It's just a difference in density that we're talking about, going plus 72 units rather than the 156, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes. So 84 units are on the books right now. They're looking for an additional roughly 70.
Okay. And so the 55 conditions that you've included here would apply both ways. So these haven't been written just for this new density request, right?
That's correct. So the 55 conditions that are attached to the staff report are the draft approval conditions from 2021 for the 250 unit subdivision, including the 84 units that are currently draft approved in this phase.
Yeah.
So we expect that if the municipality supports the increase in density, we would be bringing forward an updated track changes set of conditions for council's consideration.
Yeah. Okay, through the chair, I just, I think that, these conditions and the developers agreed to these, correct?
The developers in 2021, the developers agreed to those conditions.
So these would still apply. And I think that really you've hit a lot of important points that are important to council in terms of accessibility. There's a bike lane in there, there's walking paths. You've addressed the tree canopy issue that is going to be important to council. And so I'm happy to see that. My only question would be, it said a quarter hectare. And so I guess that's about a half an acre. And
0.25.
I don't know.
Hectares, yeah.
Trying to figure out how big a quarter hectare is. So would that be a football field size?
0.6 acres roughly in size. So actually,
I can look it up for you.
yeah, we'll just look up the draft plans to see if we can get some dimensions.
I know. I think that I'm trying to think that I think the dog park that we have is a half an acre. Would that be close?
That sounds about right. Yeah.
So is that a half acre?
The park size, yes.
Yeah, the park's just slightly over half an acre.
Okay, so that would be
4,080 square meters
Yeah.
is an acre.
just trying to visualize this. the size of it and what it could or couldn't be. So, and I think part of the, in the conditions here, it's going to be left and then graded and seeded so that it would be grass, right? So it'd be up to us, whatever we want to do with it, correct?
That's right. So the draft approval condition will require the developer to establish, basically get the park ready. So leave it in the condition that we can take forward. Like the size that's being proposed is we're not going to put we're almost certainly not going to put a baseball diamond or a soccer field.
No.
There's plenty of, certainly enough space for.
Well, we have 60 hectares of maintained parkland. So lots, and that's all condensed basically at the lower reach, I think. But that is a pretty good density of homes. And my suspicion would be that the previous phase would probably access the park as well once completed, you know. So it'd be used by both sides of Staples, what I would think.
Yeah, I think, and that's a good point. I think with respect to, there is lots of parkland here. I think in this case, the objective is to create a local park that's accessible that people can walk to there rather than driving to lower reach for the higher order recreational activities.
Yes, and I that's my only thought was, is it big enough? But I think if I can, now that I've got more of a visualization of a comparator to it, probably is. So, okay, I'll just, I'll stand down and let my colleagues go ahead.
Steve?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I like the idea of the additional 72 units, like in higher density. That's going to allow more people to move in, and that's exactly what we're looking for. I was kind of thinking along the same lines as Councillor Brennan, that with the additional density, would that quarter hectare be enough? But it's kind of clarified in my mind. I don't think in hectares. I kind of think in acres. And
if I can, there's also a substantial amount of space, like where the wetland compensation area and that whole area down there is all remaining as accessible green space as well.
Okay.
And it's substantially larger than what we've outlined in the park area.
Okay. Well, that kind of answers any questions. So, like, I think it's a great idea. So.
Mr. Chair?
Jacqueline, yeah.
Yeah, so I actually have some questions about the reasoning why they're removing all of the single family homes and replacing them entirely with towns. I can appreciate that an increase in 72 units is great, but when you ask the question, is this a compatible form of a development? Compatible for who? Who are we gearing this towards? Because you're eliminating any type of retirement living other than just only 20 bungalow style townhomes. So what was Parkview's data? Why, like, do they need to provide anything, or is it they just want to do it, so that's what they're doing?
Thanks, Jacqueline. Carl?
Yeah, so the information, and I'm going to through you, Mr. Chair, I'm going to suggest that Scott addressed the rationale, but certainly my understanding of what's been conveyed to me is that Parkview has found that the townhomes have been selling very, very well, and they see an opportunity here to continue with that. But I think Scott would be the best person to address sort of the business decision and sort of the rationale in terms of why they're requesting this.
Okay, so just one more point before Scott talks. So they've been selling quickly, but they've been selling to investors. So now all of these are rentals. This has turned into a rental neighborhood. Having a hard time renting them. The rents are sky high. Like, again, I go back to who is this compatible for? Thank you, Scott.
What's that, Jacqueline?
Is it the microphone? Sure. So this is what I'm trying to get. I've got your voice for the recording, for what it's worth.
Yeah, what we've got going on in Smiths Falls right now, townhomes are what we are seeing as selling right now. On singles, the sales are way down. The increased density is absolutely in line with C23 in providing more homes faster. We're getting more houses per square acre on the property. There's no shortage of single homes being built in Smiths Falls. All of Wood Avenue, all of Rob Campbell's development is all singles in through that area. Samirs are creating lots of condos and rental buildings within the town. There's a need for all of those different types of living spaces, and it just seems to be that our niche is doing townhomes, Campbell's are doing single homes, Samirs are doing condos and rental apartments. So not necessarily blending them all in the same developments. Are you seeing any singles in this design? No, you're not, but you're not seeing any townhomes in any of Campbell's or Samir's major developments in the town either. We're trying to maximize the amount of houses that we can put in. That's what the provincial mandate is to build more houses faster. This is a way to maximize the space that we have in there to get as many as many homes, move as many people into town as we can provide spacing for. Who the houses are sold to isn't, what the intent of the person who buys the home isn't really within our control, what they decide to do with it. I'm not sure what else to add to that.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it, Mr. Chair. I guess in response to that, but that's what we're left with, right? So, I can appreciate that this particular part of town is turned into more townhome styles, but I do have a concern about only having 20 bungalow style townhomes. We have an aging population, I think. With just the two styles that are in there, I think that needs to be addressed, but in my opinion.
Thanks, Jacqueline. I agree with what Jacqueline just said there with the bungalow style. I think, and like they've gone over excellent, like in two other areas in town, really well. And like the only other area you have them in is over on Ferreira Drive there. I, like myself, in the design that's here, I think it would be, to me, it would look good to see the bungalow style all across carry them right around over to Staples Drive on that side. And the other question I have in that retention pond, is that retention pond going to be maintained? Because it doesn't look like a wilderness. I've been in all other areas. We've got retention ponds here in town that absolutely look good, or not look good rather. The one at Walmart is nothing but a glorified garbage dump. It's full of papers, trees, everything. It's never been cleaned, nothing. And the one that's over on the corner of Broadview and Herald, it looked good when it was started and finished. But take a look at it now. And if there was, I can take you to some areas back home from where my home is, and they've got retention ponds that are all coated with shot rock around the outside, and they're totally clean. Some of them are big enough that they've had that there's green space park area there for kids and everything incorporated into that area. And the fact that you got a walkway coming around the outside of it, I think it would be to have it maintained, that it's not going to all grow up in weeds and look like. I wouldn't want to buy one of those houses and look out at it and it all growing up in willows and weeds. It doesn't present unto me. Carl?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to confirm the lands that through the subdivision plan, the stormwater pond lands as well as the lands to the left of that will be conveyed to the municipality. So it'll be the town's responsibility to maintain that. I understand, and the engineer can, or Scott can correct me if I'm wrong, but I understand this will be a dry pond, not a wet pond like what we have on Harold Street. So it would be filled in times of high need, but other than that, it would not be a wetland for longer periods of time. That is it is a dry pond, Scott.
It is, yeah, I mean, in the original design.
Yeah, so those lands will be conveyed to the municipality. It won't be fenced off and ignored by a third party, I guess. I think another thing, the comments I'm hearing on building typologies, that's excellent feedback. That's something that certainly I'll welcome any direction from the committee on that. I can take that back to the developer and to council for consideration in terms of sort of a diversity in building types, even if it's townhouses.
Thanks, Yvonne.
Thank you very much. I was quite interested in the changes that were being proposed and the increased number of lots. That is quite a number of people in a very small area in my world. Until I see what it looks like. And I do have a bit of concern about the size of the parkland, mainly because it's all of that area that would be drawn to it. And what you may be getting in there are tenants with young people that have young children, and they're going to be looking for more parkland that may be allocated here. And the single family dwelling units that are on there, yeah, potentially we could see some increase in those, and considering our seniors. And
Thanks, Yvonne. Carl, isn't there green space over in this block on the other spot, on the other half?
Yes, Mr. Chair, that is
Down in
correct.
that big block down at the bottom.
Yep. So this parkland is proposed to service this phase, the area that's in yellow and red. On the other side of Staples Boulevard through the previous subdivision approval, a parkland, if I can you see my,
This area
you can
want.
see my cursor. This area here has been, you can't.
Bottom right on the screen.
The white area.
right.
It's right here in the, yeah, that big
Okay.
block
Blank space
right
there.
that is parkland as well?
That
Well, there's green
part of
space
it is
there.
part of it's parkland.
Yeah.
Some of it is provincially significant wetland, but there has been an area set aside. Again, roughly the same size, maybe a little bit larger, that has been set aside for parkland. Our community services department has been working with planning staff to develop a design build RFP for that, and certainly that implementation will be carried through through the budget process. But that's intended to service the townhomes to the right of Staples Boulevard.
And if I may, everything to the left of the green pathway that's shown there is all open field, natural open field there as well.
Mr. Chair, I have another question.
Yes, Jacqueline?
Maybe Carl can address or answer this. At any point, was there ever a discussion about fencing in the backyards? I just need a reminder on that. When you drive through, you have about 45 people looking in your backyard. Just wondering, was there a requirement for a rear fence, side yard fences, rear fences?
Through you, Mr. Chair, typically as far as subdivision draft approval conditions for previous phases, normally the municipality requires a condition for a fence if there's, for instance, if there's a natural hazard or a wetland or an arterial road or some sort of purpose such as that really ups the requirement for it. Through previous phases, typically did not require fences to be put along any other property lines. Those are left to the developers. I think obviously any fencing we would we would encourage, it would have to work around the grading and drainage easements that exist on some of the properties. But that's if council and committee is supportive of more fencing, say along to the rear of the dry stormwater area, to the rear of the Cataraqui Trail, or even elsewhere in the subdivision, then that's a draft approval condition that could be recommended and considered by council if committee and council feels that a higher amount of fencing is appropriate.
Yeah.
Yeah, on that note, that is not specifically part of this application that we're hearing tonight, is it? It's more be a site plan item.
Carl?
So through you, Mr. Chair, there's since these homes are based on Planning Act changes to the site plan process, townhouse developments would no longer be subject to site plan approval. So at this point, fencing has not been discussed for this phase in detail with the developer, but when it comes to finalizing draft approval conditions, I think my recommendation to committee and to council is if we feel that fencing is important behind the behind these homes abutting the natural areas, the open spaces, then the draft approval condition establishes a condition that these areas be fenced and that be implemented in the subdivision agreement. So typically it would be implemented in the subdivision agreement as a developer responsibility, but that requirement would be a condition of approval that's implemented at that stage. Okay. So I think now's the time to have that conversation. Okay. I think if we want to fence this.
Yeah, through the chair, forgive me because I'm still catching up here on the new legislation, and I guess that if I may be wrong, but you can correct me, that's why we have 55 conditions attached to this, is that correct? That's why we have 55 conditions, because of the change.
Well, those conditions were established before Bill 23. So I think it was actually expected back when the subdivision was draft approved in 2021. It was assumed that some of the granular site-specific items would be addressed through a site plan application process. That's no longer the case. So the 2021 conditions will obviously be reassessed for this new development, make sure that the implementation is aligned with current legislation.
Yeah. Okay. Just one final. I'll just say that I think that it is appropriate and desirable to increase the density in that area anywhere we can. We are challenged with new areas to build on, as you know, and I think that pending what council says, there may be a point of contention on the green space, but I think that might have been addressed a couple of minutes ago, and because that was my thought, that's why I brought it up initially. So I'm supportive of the changes they're proposing here, and actually what it is 156 plus 72, and otherwise we wouldn't be sitting here if it was just 156. So I'm supportive of the change they want to make.
Yvonne?
I also believe that it's in keeping with what the provincial federal government have been trying to push is more housing, and density and multiples are the way to go right now.
Stephen?
And I'm in support of it as well. It falls in line with council's idea of getting more homes for people to live in. So yeah, I'm in favor.
Are you looking for a motion then, Carl, from us?
So motion would be a motion. Yes, a motion. A motion would be desirable, and just to I've taken some notes for the conversation here, just to capture the committee's considerations. I think that should be included in a motion so that it's documented the report to council. So I see here that the committee is interested in exploring more diversity in building typology. So the bungalow versus the two-story homes, a broader mix of that, potentially more. I think you're looking at accessibility and creating more housing for seniors and for those who don't want or need a whole lot of stairs. I'm also noting maintenance of stormwater management ponds, seeing that being highlighted as important. I think assessing the adequacy of the green space, just making sure that this is adequate to satisfy or to service that phase, and also assessing fencing where appropriate behind homes. Without getting into details about where that's at, we can take that back and work on that. But seeing that is as a priority for committee. Is that have I captured it, or am I, or does the committee have any additional feedback that may go into a motion?
I think that pretty well covers it. Jacqueline?
Yes, thank you. Yes, did you hear me?
Yeah.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, I didn't hear anything after thank you. So
Yes,
So
it covers it.
it covers it?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, well, now I'll enter into a motion here. Moved by Yvonne, seconded by Stephen. All in favor? Carried. Item number 7 on the agenda, project updates, we have none. Next meeting of Planning Advisory Committee, January 11th, 2024. Do I have a motion for adjournment? Moved by Jay.
Since this is the last meeting before the holidays, I'd like to wish everyone a Merry Christmas. I really appreciate how many times you've turned up here, on how many evenings over the course of the year. We've had a lot of things passed through our desk, and I'm grateful for everyone's work, everyone's advice. I think this is the sort of feedback and discussion here is exactly what I envisioned as the Planning Advisory Committee for applications such as this. So thank you all, and Merry Christmas.
Same to you guys.
Same to you.
Are you going to Florida?
I am.
No?
Yeah, we switched up our plane, so actually on the 11th I will be just arriving at our Airbnb, so I will be missing the public meeting that we